When people think of water on a farm, they usually picture something like this: the heavy downpour nourishing the fields. And while rain is important, it's not the only water that matters. Fresh water keeps the hens happily hydrated with just the right amount that they need to stay healthy and keep on laying.
The turkeys, too, just like all of the other animals, depend on a steady supply of water. Without it, there's no farm, no food, no future. The cows, well, they take hydration pretty seriously. These big beauties need gallons and gallons of water to stay at their best, especially during the hot summer days.
Ram lambs grazing on fresh pasture only drink a small amount of water at one time, so they have a small waterer that is easy for them to reach.
Out here, water is the lifeblood of every living thing, whether it's for the crops, the pasture, or most importantly, the animals. From sunrise to sunset, making sure every animal has access to clean, fresh water is one of the most essential tasks on the farm.
Not all of our animals have water with them, running to them. Sometimes we have to haul it to them. Our meat birds are just the case. We have to fill up some buckets and actually take the water to them.
And sometimes the littlest animals need a special setup. Our newest piglets may be small, but they're quick learners. Stick around and see how they figure out their very own water system.
The meat chickens are growing strong, and like every animal, they rely on water. It's simple, but it's everything.
But when something goes wrong with the farm's water, it's time to get to work and figure it out.
Oftentimes in a military strategy, you can have the best plan, but if you don't talk about or plan for the contingencies, about the things that can go wrong and inevitably do go wrong, if you haven't planned for those, you end up, sometimes failing or at least not doing well. I feel like farming is a lot like that. It just seems like there's constant contingencies. There's the cow got out, the sheep needs something, the chickens are out. There's always a contingency. There's always something happening. And I came home yesterday to there's no water. Our entire farm runs off of one well. We've got about a mile of underground piping that goes to 8 different frost-free cattle waterers. And so for the farm to be without water means the humans and all the animals are without water. The first step in that contingency is figure out why the water's off, what is happening. So it took me a while yesterday, and I finally found what was going on. One of our frost-free cattle waterers, where I added a hose bib to it, something happened, and I don't know exactly what, but the water was just overflowing everywhere. So I turned the water off at the pump, so at least we could stop pumping water all over the ground, and then came down and turned the water off at the waterer, which allowed it to dry up. And so today I'm coming out to try to figure out what was going on. So what you'll see is I'm going to take the waterer apart, drain the water out of it, and see if we can figure out what happened. Why is it leaking? This is what our waterers look like. They're great. They're frost-free water. You can see around it where it's all wet from where it was leaking last night. You can also see the hose bib or connection that we've got coming up out of the water. So the way these work, it's almost like your toilet. There's a float valve down inside here, and as the cows drink out of the waterer, these balls, the cows are able to push them down, and then there's water underneath. As the cows drink out of the water, the level goes down, the ball of the float valve drops, and that allows water to come out of the valve and refill the water. And what I did was, down inside there, I put another hose, this hose, on. I connected it so that we could have a hose, and this particular hose runs across the pasture up through those woods to the other side, and that we water our breeder hogs with this particular hose. So the situation we're in this morning is the breeders have no ability to refill their water. They got water yesterday, so it's not an emergency, but we need to get this fixed. I use these quick connects for the hose. When the cows are in here, we never leave the hose connected. So this quick connect makes it easy to move the hose off of the water. So the first step is to take this top off. There's some 1/2-inch bolts that go in here, lag screws basically. This top just lifts off. Get the balls out of the way. There are 2 plugs on this on the back side. Let me show you those. So inside those holes are 2 plugs that allow you to drain the water, and you can just reach in and pop those plugs out, and then the water drains out. Now with the water drained out, I can take these lag bolts out, and that will allow me to lift the water up. This float valve just screws onto a PVC fitting that passes through this piece of PVC pipe that basically acts as a conduit. So now I just have to feed this hose back down through that pipe as I lift it up. And that'll allow us to see what's going on down inside there. So there's the underside of the water with the hose coming up through. That was what was attached to the float valve. And then underneath that water is a 12-inch piece of pipe, frost-free, and you can see that it basically just blew our fitting off. Not sure why it did that. So what I have is way down, you can see that there's PVC that comes up out of the ground, underground, and there's a gate valve, cutoff valve underneath that cap right there, 6-inch pipe with a 6-inch cap on it. It goes down under the ground to a gate valve that allows you to shut it off. Doesn't shut off completely, but most of the way. And then PVC comes up. I transition from PVC into some black rubber hose, and then from that black rubber hose into a threaded nipple that allows me to then thread in a Y that's basically a garden hose Y. And then from that Y, I go to the float valve and to the water hose spigot. I gotta get this back on and figure out why it came off. I think what I'm gonna do for right now is I'm gonna turn off the float valve portion. I'm gonna put this back on so that I can hook the hose up to it and get the pigs some water. And then we'll have to come back and figure out exactly what else we can do. My fitting is not wanting to screw on. have it screwed back on now. As soon as the leaking has stopped, I'm going to put the hose bib on, see if we can get a temporary fix for some water. Nope, that does not. I think the issue is this Y valve has such a small amount of threads right here. You can see it's very, very shallow and just really not enough to grip onto the nipple. So bad choice of Y valves. Let's go see maybe up at the barn if I have something else. I've got a cheap Harbor Freight toolbox that's sort of my plumbing contingency kit. So I have a solid one-piece Y that I found. I'm going to try that instead of the one that allows to shut off and on. And I've got some plumber's tape and then some new gaskets. See if that might work a little better. I'm actually going to use some Teflon thread sealer on this and see if I can get it to seal down better. Feels to me like the whole thing is cross-threading. I'm going to use a couple of these just cut-offs and screw them on to turn the water off so I can build up pressure and see if it's going to blow that off again or if it's going to stay. I'm actually going to open the gate valve and build up a lot of pressure on it and see what happens. I'll show you the gate valve as I do it. So this is a 6-inch pipe, as I mentioned, and there's a cap over the pipe. Pretty deep down inside, there's a gate valve in there. Got a piece of 2-inch PVC with notches cut on the one end of it that align with the gate valve. So we can just drop the PVC down in there, get it aligned with that valve, and then just turn the PVC. That allows you to turn that gate valve on. So now the pressure's on, so still leaking where that Y meets the nipple, which means probably need to put a new nipple on. Okay, pressure's back off. Let's go see if we've got a new nipple. So it looks like the threads are good. They're gonna line up. So I'm gonna change out the nipple now. The Y didn't seem to fix it. Tight, but not too tight. My dad tells stories about his dad, and he would say, "Hey Dad, how tight do I have to get it?" And his dad would tell him, "About a quarter turn before it breaks." So hopefully I got that about a quarter turn before it breaks. I've had the PVC break at the bottom of this 12-inch pipe as well, and that is not fun. At that point, I am basically standing on my head, shoulders as narrow as I can get them down inside of this piece of 12-inch PVC. So I'm trying to be very careful not to do that, because that is not fun at all. Shut off the flow, see what happens. No. Okay, let's get the pigs some water, and then we can come back and do something different. That cutoff is leaking bad, and the Y is leaking. All right, we can at least get the pigs some water.
Man, y'all turned it over. Yeesh. I'm dumping this because it's gross. I know. This will be fun, won't it? Okay, here we go. No, quit. I wonder why there's mud in there. Hey, we gotta change this. The pigs are now watered, so let's go back over and work on that water a little bit more after we get some more parts, and then I'll join Rich and see if we can get this thing fixed.
So we've continued to work the issue, and it appears from the beginning what's been happening is this nipple to male threads, the threads were not designed for water hose. And the fittings that I've been using are water hose fittings. So we were able to get a different nipple to male threads and put it in, and you saw me do that. The issue with that was the gasket, the water hose gasket that I used was the one that came with the Y, and it's just a little bit soft and flimsy. And so when I tightened that nipple down, it crushed the gasket inside here. The gasket just isn't strong enough to hold up to being tightened down that tight. And it has to be tight because in this area of our farm, the water pressure is really high because the pump is way up on a hill. So what we were able to do was take it back apart. I have a bag here of other gaskets. These gaskets are quite a bit more substantial. They're thicker and they're just a harder rubber. I was able to put this gasket in and then tighten it back down. I was hand tight only. I didn't use the wrenches, and put it back together, and it's holding pressure. At this point, I'm going to turn it back off and take these green stops off and put our hoses back on and get everything put back together. And it will shut off. All's well there.
There's cameras here, silly. You lost your mind.
It works. With the waterer back up and running, it's time to get back to business. The feeder pigs are always thirsty, and making sure they stay hydrated is key to their growth. And they love to play in the spray.
The piglets learn really young how to use these nipples that we put in the barrels. They bite it, and as they bite it, the water comes out, and they learn real young how to use it. And they also learn how to make mud puddles out of it. They'll stand there and bite down on it, and the water will just pour out of their mouth, and they turn it into a mud puddle. So a lot of times around our waterers is where they've made a mud puddle. I'm about to use this barrel and put together a new water for the little piglets, and I'm going to put the nipple down here towards the bottom of the barrel. That way they can reach it really well. And the things that I'm going to use to do it, one is this gravity flow pig water nipple, and then stainless steel bulkhead water tank connectors. This box we get on Amazon, and it comes with a hole saw, some threaded Teflon tape, and then this bulkhead connector. And it passes through the tank and then screws down tight with a washer on either side. And then the nipple then screws into this side like that. And then the tank sits right there in between those two gaskets. So let's get her done. I'm looking to put it at about the right height for the little piglets to be able to reach it without much issue. Somewhere right here in the middle of this first section. On the inside, a gasket and a nut. On the outside, a gasket, and then the hole that the nipple screws into. Now we'll tighten it down.
Watching these little guys learn how to drink from the gravity water nipple always reminds me, on a farm, every drop counts.